Fear of Flying by Lionel Walfish. Emma Sloat was upset from the very moment she awakened that morning. Her husband, Morris, had insisted that she keep the doctor's appointment that he'd made for her in the afternoon, and just the thought of it made her feel sick to her stomach. The departure date for their European trip was fast approaching, and Emma's long fear of flying was something that had to be addressed. The idea of being off the ground, suspended in an enclosed compartment, made her ill with anxiety, and as a result, their vacations had always been limited to areas that could only be reached by car. But this coming trip was something special. It would be their 10th anniversary celebration, with careful planning to romantic European hideaways. Hypnotherapy! That's what Morris had told her, insisting that the methods of Dr. Norman Galtz were the only solution. Once and for all, he'd said, Emma had to get over this nonsense. Their European departure was only 1 month away, and 3 weeks of therapy at 2 sessions a week was all that would be needed to get her on that plane, according to the good doctor. Sitting in the waiting room of Dr. Galtz's fashionable Fifth Avenue office, Emma nervously chewed on a well-manicured thumbnail. There were no other patients in the waiting room, causing Emma to wonder whether the hour's drive in from Long Island had been worth it. She was checking the clasp of her new diamond brooch, making sure it was tight enough when the intercom finally buzzed. Emma jumped up. The receptionist smiled, slowly stood up from behind her desk, and beckoned Emma to follow her through the large wooden door and into the inner office of Dr. Galtz. Emma hated the man on sight. He was a round little troll with blistered lips, bushy hair, and very thick glasses. "Come in, Mrs. Sloat," Dr. Galtz said, gesturing her toward a leather chair on the opposite side of his desk. Emma sat down, balancing herself tentatively on the edge of the seat. "No, Mrs. Sloat, you've got to make yourself more comfortable. Sit back here. Let me take your purse. May I call you Emma?" He placed the purse on an adjacent sofa. "We have to begin by making you totally comfortable. This is not hypnosis. You are not going to be put to sleep. You are going to be an active participant in this procedure, and it is your thoughts that are going to make you comfortable." Emma looked at him dubiously. She noticed that his hands were chubby, showing tufts of matted hair at the wrists. She cringed. "Please relax, Emma," he continued. "I will be helping you to quiet your conscious mind while we focus on your fear of flying. You will be teaching yourself not to panic. You'll think of things that will make you feel good. Remember, you are always in complete control. Your thoughts are what create your reality." The more Emma Sloat looked at the little man, the more he revolted her. It was something about his squinty little eyes that filled her with a complete disgust. Brewster! Of course. Dr. Galtz was the spitting image of her first husband, Brewster Spratz. She wondered why it hadn't come to her before. Suddenly, she was transported back to that last evening with Brewster. It was a nightmare she would never forget. He had maligned her terribly, suspecting her of having an affair with his younger business partner. She had, and accusing her of marrying him strictly for his money. She did. It certainly wasn't for his good looks. She remembered how Brewster had cursed her violently that night, walking out of the house and putting an end to their 1-year marriage. Emma would have been relieved, but because of Brewster's team of cunning lawyers, Emma was left with very little to live on. She was forced to move out of the house and take a job as a nanny, working for the Zerwinski family across town while living in their basement apartment. On more than one occasion, at a midtown shopping mall, Emma encountered Brewster with his fat new wife. She hated him even more. He was shorter and uglier than ever. Then, one day, Emma met Morris Sloat. She was at an after-school children's pickup site, waiting for the Zerwinski kids, when Morris suddenly appeared. He was awaiting his 6-year-old grandson, a chore he enjoyed, as his daughter-in-law was finishing up with her apprenticeship at a local law firm, and his son was unable to leave his own place of business. For both Emma and Morris, it was love at first sight. After a respectful courtship, Morris's wife had died the year before, Emma accepted his proposal of marriage. Morris was a prominent art dealer, and his profession demanded that he make regular trips to European auction sales. He always urged Emma to accompany him so that he could show her the beauties of Europe, but she wouldn't even consider it. How could she possibly, after what had happened? The memory of that flight could not be erased. All she had to do was close her eyes, and she was once again a little girl with her parents on the plane. They were on a flight to Ohio, when suddenly the plane flew into an air pocket, plunging several hundred feet downwards, sending trays of hot and cold beverages and small carry-ons into the arms and hand-protected faces of screaming passengers. It was a horror that she had relived for years. And now this, sitting across from a man that so much reminded her of Brewster. Close your eyes, Emma. Now think pleasant thoughts, something you are comfortable with. Remember, nothing is going to harm you. But all Emma could think of was Brewster Spatz, who had harmed her. He was the man who had tried to destroy her. You're boarding a plane, Emma. It's a beautiful day out. The sun feels warm on your arms. Perhaps you're hearing soft classical music. Emma was on the tarmac, lined up to enter the plane. She heard the happy chatter of fellow passengers. Suddenly, just ahead of her, she saw the squat figure of Brewster Spatz boarding the plane. She tried to put the thought of her ex-husband out of her mind, but every time she opened her eyes and looked at the bloated little doctor sitting across from her, Brewster's image appeared closer and closer. She saw Brewster taking a window seat, and when she boarded the plane herself, the only available seat was the one right next to him. Right away, Emma knew that she had to imagine herself off that plane. She just had to, and very quickly. We'll have a more successful session next time, Emma, Dr. Galt said. The first time can be a bit trying. Emma tried to shake off the horrible thoughts that she'd been having. She wouldn't take the doctor's repugnant little hand when extended once again. Our next appointment will have to be later next week, Dr. Galt said. I'm leaving for Miami late tonight, and I won't be back for a week. Just check with my receptionist on your way out. And always remember, Emma, your thoughts create your reality. Emma knew she was not going to go back to Dr. Galt's. She was never going to board an aircraft again in her life. The image of her despicable first husband sitting beside her on a plane had now doubled her fear of flying. She would convince Morris that they could have a wonderful 10th wedding anniversary without having to board a plane. Emma was feeling better already. She would tell Morris that the afternoon went well, but really, she didn't want to go back. Perhaps a leisurely drive to the Catskills would make a nice 10th anniversary holiday. Early the next morning, on his way to get the newspaper that had just been delivered on the doorstep, Morris was still hoping that Emma might change her mind and give Dr. Galt's another chance. Their next-door neighbor, Harry Feldstein, was standing in front of his own doorway, looking down at the Daily Herald. He looked up at Morris, shook his head, and said, "Terrible about that late-night flight to Miami, huh?"